What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards Football Sports Talk Radio. I'll be your host and producer this afternoon, Logan Landers, and joining me to talk about the Cleveland Browns and looking back at their 2025 draft class and what we think of that overall. Help me out today is our NFL insider, Trey Sims. Trey, what's going on, man? How's your night been?
It's all right. How you been?
Doing good, man. Doing good here. And before we talk about this draft class and the litany of quarterbacks selected, be sure if you guys enjoyed this episode, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Of course, as you know by now, we go live each and every single week, all 52 weeks out of the year, Facebook and on YouTube. Check us out live there. Also, go and download our podcast on Apple, on Spotify, on iTunes, on iHeart, wherever you can get your podcast. We are over there, and that is thanks to Believe Podcast Network, just audio versions of all of our video content you see here each and every single week. So, Trey, I'm going to pose the question to you first and foremost. What would you grade your division rival, the Cleveland Browns, in their draft class, knowing that you are our resident Pittsburgh Steelers fans? We talked about them last week. So how do you think your North Division rivals did in the Browns?
I feel like they have a lot of mixed feelings. I give them like a B, depending on how you view it. If you view that they need offensive help, then I say like it's a B plus, maybe even a low A. But if you think that they picked too many players because they went and got two quarterbacks, two running backs, and then they didn't really just get a plethora of different positional help, then maybe you go lower, like a B minus, maybe a C plus, and it might be a little bit of my bias coming out a little bit for a lower of the pick. But I'm gonna go with a B because I think that the players that they got are good players. They were productive in college, and so they should translate or potentially could translate to the pros.
And the thing with this draft class is, Trey, that they're going to be judged. It could be for a season or it could be for many seasons because the Browns were the team who ended up trading out and not picking up Travis Hunter. They traded that pick to Jacksonville, as we all well know. And I think when you look at this draft class as a whole for Cleveland, I like what they did. They had some really good players, I think. Offensive minded for the most part, right? Like you mentioned, they doubled up. They went for double quarterbacks by getting Dylan Gabriel and also Shedeur Sanders, who we'll mention here a little bit more in just a moment. Their first overall selection at number 5 being Mason Graham, who has been heavily ridiculed this week on social media due to a lot of people saying out of shape, but could just be that heat out there in Cleveland. I'm not sure, but you got him, who you're hoping can pair well, of course, with Myles Garrett as kind of the future of that Browns D-line. Looking at the rest of this draft class, I will say I do enjoy a couple of the other players they got, like Quinshon Judkins, the running back there at Ohio State, because we know they got rid of Nick Chubb, who left the team after a very productive couple of seasons there in Cleveland, unfortunately just plagued by injuries in the latter portion of it. But I like this new running back tandem that they're going to kind of roll with here with the rookies in Quinshon Judkins and also Dylan Sampson, who did some good work out there for the Volunteers in Tennessee this past year. But I will say I think maybe the steal for this draft class came in the third round. That's Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end out of Bowling Greens. I mean, stats-wise, he led the nation in a bunch of different categories. A lot of people thought that he was going to win the tight end of the year award in college football. That did not go his way, but a lot of people argue that it should have. Of course, we know the stats could be inflated due to him playing at Bowling Green, which isn't a powerhouse, we'll say, when it comes to college football or many athletics. But, I mean, the numbers don't lie, and he was definitely productive, of course. So I like that. And also the Carson Schlesinger pick when they went in second round, linebacker there from UCLA. I like that nice pickup too. So I would give him maybe a B plus or an A minus, honestly. I like the majority of the selections here. Now, here is where I'm not so sure about what was going on here, Trey. And that's the big thing a lot of people are talking about this draft class, and that is selecting 2 quarterbacks, both in the later rounds when we already know it's just a loaded quarterback room. Like there's not enough room in there. I mean, you got Joe Flacco, you got, I believe, like Kenny Pickett is still there. You've got now Dylan Gabriel. Now you've got Shedeur Sanders. I mean, Deshaun Watson's not going to play, but he's still listed on the roster. So it's a packed house there in the quarterback room. And from what I've read, and I'll get your thoughts on this, you kind of get differing opinions on how the guys are doing in mini camps right now, right? You see some reporters say that, oh, Shedeur Sanders is dominating, right? He's looking great, and Dillon Gabriel is struggling. He can't complete a pass. And then if you look, if you scroll down 2 tweets, you'll see that, oh, Dillon Gabriel threw this beautiful spiral, and Shedeur Sanders threw a ball 5 feet in front of the wide receiver's foot. So, Trey, what's your thoughts on this situation? And ultimately, how do you think the quarterback situation is going to play out in Cleveland? Because, look, it's a mess right now.
Like you said, as I was watching the draft, once they got Dillon Gabriel, Cleveland got Dillon Gabriel, I thought that they were done with quarterback. And then obviously they came around and got Shedeur, and everybody was like, whoa. So it was like, my initial thoughts was like, I don't know how Shedeur gets on the field, because technically now he's the 4th string because Deshaun's hurt. But if Deshaun, when he comes back, he'd be the 5th string. So like, how does he get on the field? And then I thought, and as the time keeps going on, it's like, well, Shedeur is more than just a football player, as we all know. He's a legitimate celebrity. He's a legitimate star. So like, because I was looking at earlier today or yesterday, there's a Cleveland Browns fan who was talking about how much revenue Shedeur will bring to this team, and that they almost have to play him, or they have to like consider playing him. So with that, and he is talented, because I think that him and Dillon Gabriel have their own faults. They have their own strengths. So like, when you hear them talking about Shedeur's having a great day and Dillon's not having a great day, or vice versa, Dillon's having a great day, Shedeur's not having a great day. When you hear that, you're like, well, all quarterbacks gonna have their problems and their struggles. So you gotta have to just kind of weed and just see how it plays along and what happens. But I guess we'll see. But I think that they'll eventually will push Shedeur, because of the fact that they all the hype and all the media around them. But I guess, and then as far as the full quarterback room, I mean, they traded for Kenny Pickett, so I guess they have some thoughts of him potentially be a part of the franchise. And then Joe Flacco a couple years ago was probably one of Cleveland's best, stretch of quarterback play. So it is interesting to see what they're going to do. Like I said, it is a loaded quarterback room. And then everybody's talking about next year's quarterback class is going to be one of the better ones, with like 5-6 names that's supposed to be like legitimate prospects as a quarterback. So we'll see what Cleveland ends up doing.
So the thing for me with this whole quarterback room controversy is, it seems likely, and this is just pure speculation that I've seen that a lot of people are throwing out there, is that Joe Flacco will serve as the starter, at least in the beginning of the season. If I'm Joe Flacco, I feel like I'm just a grandpa taking his kids out every day, because he's 40, give or take, right around that age. He's been in the league since like 2009, I believe. He's been around for quite some time. Obviously, he's a veteran. He had that great role with the Ravens, and then he didn't play for a while. Then he came back, and then he hopped around for a little bit, and he's still showing that there's still some good talent left in that arm. And it's definitely kind of something that Cleveland needed, I feel, with just all the turmoil that they've had with the Deshaun Watson situation, the awful contract looking back at it now. And it feels like Joe Flacco is like a nice placeholder for the moment. Just kind of some, all right, we're going to get some hopefully solid play from a veteran. What you're going to expect week in and week out with this guy. You mentioned Kenny Pickett. They traded for him earlier in the year, around March, give or take. And look, Pickett's had, more than any of us. Obviously, he played with Pittsburgh. He was a pretty high pick there. He was thought to be the future, maybe, of the team at one point under Mike Tomlin, after they had gotten rid of Ben Roethlisberger, had retired. They were looking for that kind of next guy up. And Pickett had some good games. Obviously, he wasn't a total, just failure, but it just didn't work out for one reason or another. So it's looking like, the current QB room is, at least to start the season, at least at this moment in time, is going to be Flacco for QB1, Pickett for QB2, because he does have experience. And then 3 through 5, 5 is going to be Watson, obviously, because he's not going to play this year. But, do you really keep 4 quarterbacks on your roster, 4 active quarterbacks, each and every given Sunday, that seems like it's a little bit of overkill.
Yeah, exactly what I was saying earlier. Like, does he play? Because like, and then like if you put Shedeur on a practice squad, I believe one of those 31 other teams will probably pick him up, especially ones that need a quarterback, like the Saints, who with Derek Carr retiring, and then they drafted Shuck, and then
Tyler Shough.
and then they have Spencer Rattler, but that's the only two quarterbacks that's like really in for contention. Is that good enough to win? Win. Does that deter you from going to get a Shedeur type player? So like, I don't understand. Like, I still don't understand exactly what their whole thought process was in getting two quarterbacks. But like, we'll see, because like I said, obviously Dylan would technically have the head, the front place, because he was a 3rd round pick. So yeah.
It's going to be obvious. Look, I haven't seen this much conversation around quarterbacks drafted in the middle rounds in a long time.
Yeah.
I'll say that much. It's kind of nice and fresh to see, but I think that overall, just getting back to the draft class as a whole, I thought Cleveland did really well. I feel like they should have taken either Gabriel or Shedeur. I don't feel the need for both of them, since you already have a crowded quarterback room. I don't see them trading either of them either. I don't understand. It makes me scratch my head why they picked both of them, as well as, like you said, they're not going to trade Flacco. If anything, they're going to release him perhaps at some point. Pickett might also be another guy on the chopping block. But like I said, it all just kind of depends on how they're going to do in mini camps and how they're going to do in training camp, because I feel like that's how we're really going to cut the dead weight here and see who's going to rise above and who might falter. But it's definitely, an interesting scenario out there in Cleveland, who has some good players, obviously, on paper, as we've seen. But I don't know if they can couple all that together to be, that force out there in the North, like they were in, a couple of years ago when they were looking good with Baker and company. I don't know if they can get back to that kind of play, at least at this time. But I'll just throw this out here, Trey, and then we'll round up the video. Do you think that Shedeur Sanders will be a starting quarterback for this team at some point this season?
It's just, you said that I was about to say, there has been reports that the other rookies are kind of leaning towards him as far as like being his leadership qualities, and how they more listening and willing to follow him other than Gabriel. So that is interesting that they may feel like the Shedeur might be the better quarterback. The unspoken words per se, not necessarily saying to the media. So, and like I said, we do know that Shedeur has talent, and obviously, and he is Deion's son, so he has all that around him. So it is a possibility that maybe he could. It's a very very intriguing story to continue to follow. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, during training camps and in the rest of this rookie mini camps and OTAs and all that.
Yeah, and looking also just at this draft class, just one more thought here, and then we'll round out the show. Boy, getting that Schlesinger pick in round 3 is kind of a blessing in disguise, since it came out earlier in the week that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who is a very talented linebacker at Notre Dame, he's going to miss the rest of the season due to a neck injury. He got hurt about midway point last year, and he's still just not healthy. Hopefully he gets back to playing form. But man, it's just a team that has been derailed in recent years by injuries, as well as a bunch of other factors. But that came out earlier in the week, and we hope that he gets back and on the field as quick as he can. But if I'm Schlesinger, that tells me I got to step up even more so now than ever, because they're going to be calling my number, and I'm going to get a lot more action, maybe than originally thought. He's going to get a lot more snaps out there, and he's going to have to learn quick. So. It's a very interesting Browns team. A lot of people say that they could be super talented this year, that if the rookies develop quick, that they really could show out and kind of surprise some people. But I've also seen people say, all right, well, this is a super young team now. They have a lot of young talent, and they need a couple of years to develop. So to go along with all the quarterback controversy, this is just an interesting team, and we'll see how they progress this season and throughout the rest of the NFL year. Well, Trey, I appreciate you, man, coming on the show today. talking about the Cleveland Browns, their draft class, and the quarterback controversy that everyone has been talking about since the draft ended a couple of weeks ago. I'm your host and producer, Logan Landers. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll see